people at $100,000 a year, they're in less of like a financial danger. Because if you're at $500,000, you're most likely in a very high stress career. And if you're not thinking about it properly, you probably won't have the flexibility to buy back time and have autonomy.
So whenever you get north of $1 million,
If you're not intentional about your decisions, it can get pretty tight pretty quickly and your money temperature can get out of control.
the thing that's lost as income rises, it's keeping that percentage of savings in line with the new income as it goes up.
Budgeting and tracking expenses is a waste of time. You're not going to accomplish anything. You're just going to stress yourself out. And in the financial universe, like dollars that don't have a job, they're going to get spent. We've seen a lot of clients in this situation, helping them get out of it. It's very fulfilling. But if you can stay out of it as you go, it's going to be much, much easier. So there's a sweet spot here between saving and spending, and less than 10% of the population is in that sweet spot. And so the sweet spot, I'm going to say, is
The savings differences, if you're making $100,000 per year, $500,000 per year, or $1 million per year, are wildly different. So in this video, we're going to talk about different strategies that you can implement based on whether you fall in these different income ranges.
So Chris, the interesting thing we talk about these ranges is I'd say in general, like people at $100,000 a year, sometimes they're in less of like a financial danger. And the reason I say that, as crazy as that sounds, is at $100,000 a year, people have to watch every dollar. I think what you pay attention to, you can build a strategy behind it. So if, at $100,000 a year, let's break it down. I mean, you're basically netting, if you get your free 401k match, you're putting on 6%. Let's say a company matches 50%, so they match 3. You want to do that, it's free money. You're probably netting about $6,000 a month. Now we're assuming you're in Pennsylvania. You're paying state tax, federal tax, Social Security tax, Medicare tax, and local tax. So at $6,000 a month at this level, you probably have fixed costs, rent, car payment, maybe some student loans that are eating up 3. Credit card bills are 2. You probably have $1,000 a month left over after the 401k that you can start saving. And so if you're used to living off of 5 and you're young, you're putting the 6% and getting 3% in your 401k. And let's say with that $1,000 a month, you max out a Roth IRA. That's now like $583 a month you can put in there if you're under 50. And then let's say you start a small brokerage account, or you pay off extra in your debt, you're going to be on track to replicate your money temperature by retirement. Now, if we fast forward, and we'll go into detail, at $1 million, you're probably bringing home $50,000 to $52,000 a month. And it's really easy to justify a big house, several cars. And, even at 52, if you're only saving like $3,000 or $4,000 a month, you're not going to become close to replicating the net worth you need to replicate that lifestyle. And you're going to be in a real danger zone. So what else? So at $100,000 a year, after you've maxed out your 401k, after you've maxed out, now explain why someone would definitely want to max out a Roth IRA. And then for most people, it becomes the decision of, do I pay down my debt or do I invest? Do I pay the minimum on my debt? Do I pay extra on the debt, or do I invest the money in a brokerage account or a savings account? So give us a hierarchy of decisions of like what you must do, and then what some of the forks in the road and how to navigate that on a personal, one-by-one basis.
Yeah, the first no-brainer is always contribute up to the match, because if you're not doing that, you're leaving free money on the table. So in your example, you said if you give 6% and you get 3% back, you want to at least do 6% into the 401k and then stop there, because the next best bucket, in our opinion, to fund is a Roth IRA. Reason being for that is there's a little bit more flexibility than a 401k plan. You can always take what's called your basis, or the money that you put in, can come out tax and penalty free if you truly needed to fall back on it in a real emergency instance. So right now that Roth IRA limit, $7,000 per year. So you put in the 7, you could always take it back out. The growth, if you take it out, it's taxed and penalized, but you have that kind of emergency fund.
And if you wait till 60, then everything is tax free. The only other caveat, if you're under 100,000, you can do a regular Roth IRA, which makes the basis available anytime. If you're over the limits and doing a backdoor Roth IRA, and you have to wait 5 years on the basis before you can get it out tax penalty free. Or tax free, you'd have to pay the 10% penalty on your basis. But okay, so you've done the 6%, you've done the Roth IRA. Now let's say you have an extra $500 a month of freed up money. And this is assuming that you have your fixed bills, student loans, rent or mortgage, and a car payment. And then your credit card, like your swipe in money, we call it, you got your fixed expenses and your variable expenses. Your variable expenses, we have in a separate checking account. We call this reverse budgeting. It's $2,000 a month. So we have that extra $1,000 a month of free cash flow. The Roth's getting $583. So now we've got $417 a month Are we paying off extra debt? Are we paying off the student loans quicker? Or are we building that up in a brokerage account or a savings account? What are we doing?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the circumstances. Any money that you're going to need in 3-5 years or so, like if you're saving for a down payment on a house, we wouldn't recommend to invest that money. So I think it depends on the circumstances of the person. But in general, it's that first step, the match, Roth IRA, and then what are your priorities? If you already own a house and you're paying on a mortgage already, maybe you're not looking to save for something like that. So then the focus would be like, what's your highest interest debt? Should we prioritize student loans if you have them, or car note? Yeah, debt reduction at that point could make sense, but depending if you're saving for other goals, we'd want to be mindful of that.
Yeah, ways to get ahead. I mean, if you want to really hustle, live with a couple roommates, start a side hustle. Simple as that. You've lived with a couple roommates, you cut your expenses down in half. That's going to be, especially at a young age, investing, when you're 25 versus waiting at 30. It can be, millions of dollars of difference on the back end, getting those early years done. And then side hustle, you can start being super tax efficient. If you have 1099 income, you can set up a SEP IRA. You can deduct certain, things off of that, mileage on a car, maybe a home office, etc. So if you want to get ahead, those would be the two simplest things. And then learn how to negotiate at your job. At 100,000, you're probably a W-2 employee somewhere. Learn how to negotiate. Look at what is the income I want in 3 to 5 years. Who makes that my company? Ask them to be a mentor. Ask them what was their pathway, and then just write down pen to paper. What does the path look like, and how do I do that as quickly as possible? It's simple as that. So let's jump to 500,000. So real quick on the 100,000, reverse budgeting is key. Make the one decision to set up the money and what's going into each account initially, and then just do it. Budgeting and tracking expenses is a waste of time. You're not going to accomplish anything. You're just going to stress yourself out. Make the one decision. You call shotgun on the philosophy, and then just force yourself into a system that you have to follow it. Simple as that. And then avoid lifestyle creep. Do the opposite of lifestyle creep. Make some tough decisions in the early years to set the tone for the rest of your life, because the flexibility that you have later is going to be crucial. Okay, so $500,000. Break down the math approximately, Chris. What are we taking home on a monthly basis? What are the main differences, and then what does the investment strategy look like?
Yeah, so at 500 in this example, we're going to stick with PA because that's where we're at. But this income range, most people are maxing out the 401k. They're not just going up to the match, so they're doing the full 23,500, or if you're over 50, it's 31. But let's just assume it's the normal 23.5.
And if they're doing the mega backdoor Roth, they're going to company match. Let's say an extra 15. They could be throwing another 20 to 40 a year because the 415C limit's way higher.
Yeah.
So let's just give it a range. You're probably taking home 25 to 28 a month.
Yeah. Right.
Depending on the mega backdoor Roth aspect of it.
And I think the thing that's lost as income rises, especially with people that are on like a track career wise, if you're going to start out at 100 and creep up to 500 or so, it's keeping that percentage of savings in line with the new income as it goes up, because to your point, it's harder to get into trouble at 100,000 because you're doing the first steps are kind of that percentage. If you're doing 6% and 3% and doing the Roth IRA, you're already at 15%, right, of your income is being saved every year.
Yeah.
So if you just stick with that and you're making 500,000, now that percentage is way, it's like
way
five,
lower. It drops to 5% if that's all you do.
Yeah, so that's not going to be nearly enough to build a bucket later in life that can sustain that same 25 per month that you're used to having your whole life, pretty much.
Yes, the extra tax deferred accounts we want to max out right off the bat before we consider that. If you have kids, 529 plans, at least we recommend half the money that you want to have towards college. If you want to fund 100% of it, analyze what's 50% of it's going to cost in future dollars. Let's make sure 50% is that 529. The other 50% we want in that direct index brokerage account for flexibility of timing if the market's up or down. While the kids are in college, and the flexibility of not taking money out at a loss, but also being super tax efficient. You don't want to max out a health savings account if you're eligible, triple tax-free and tax-free growth, tax-free out if you use it for healthcare related expenses. And then this is really the real difference is someone at 100,000, if they stay there their whole life, the majority of their net worth is going to be probably in their 401k, Roth IRA, and in their house. At 500,000, over half their net worth will end up in a brokerage account, because to get to that savings account, maybe 5 to 7% is through the traditional Roth IRA, mega backdoor Roth HSA. The other, to get on track to replicate that money temperature they're used to, it's going to be in a brokerage account. That takes a lot of discipline, because a brokerage account, you can access at any time. And typically we've seen with most families, it gets rated for the new furniture, the new house, the vacation house. So you got to set a minimum amount where, okay, here's when we want to be financially independent. The other thing I'm going to say too is if you're at $500,000, you're most likely in a very high stress career. And if you're not thinking about it properly, you probably want to have the flexibility to buy back time and have autonomy and not retire at 50, but have the flexibility to transition into something less stressful, or that you can control your time better by your 50. So it's that artwork again of financial planning of not just plugging in like a online calculator of when to retire at 65. It's like, okay, what if I want to have mini sabbaticals or mini retirements? Let's load that brokerage account up. First of all, that controls your money temperature, because if you don't save it, it's going to get spent. Let's face it. If you're saving 5 a month, bringing home 25, the other 20 a month is going to seep out. The universe hates like cracks. The dirt fills in the cracks. And in the financial universe, like dollars that don't have a job, they're going to get spent, right? And everyone can relate to that. So you got to call shotgun and pay yourself first and save first and make sure that, like you said, the percentages align. So if you do that properly, you're just going to have a giant brokerage account at this kind of income level. And ideally, you use ETFs, or better yet, you direct index. With technology and a team that can do this with a manpower that's looking at it, you can do this with much, you don't need $1 million. You can start with 100 and then start dollar cost averaging to it, which works great when you're purchasing individual stocks and you erase the internal cost of them and you control the tax liability of it as well. Anything else to add? I mean, we can go into more advanced topics now, Chris, but talk about donor advised funds, charitable bunching. Let's talk about, do we do deferred compensation plans if we're talking to a doctor and they have a 457, right? Not a governmental plan, a non-governmental plan. What does their estate plan look like? What are some of the major differences in these subjects that you would see at $500,000 versus the 100,000 level?
Yeah, so there's definitely more complexity introduced, just because like you said with the 100, that complexity isn't added in because you're not maxing out those accounts yet. But once you get over those thresholds, there's only so much that can go into these qualified plans. So like the brokerage account introduces a lot of discipline, but there's also going to be other avenues like the 457. We can start there. Those plans look attractive on the surface, but oftentimes if you dig into them, they're a little bit restrictive, because a 401k, it's your own account. It's protected. There's different like IRS rules that make it yours. A deferred compensation plan is your employer's promise to pay you in the future.
Yep.
So it's not like you have you'll see an account whenever you log into it, but technically if you look at the like the priority order on the employer's balance sheet, 401ks are completely protected. Then if something does happen to your employer, if it goes under, bought out,
wages are going to go.
Yeah, the 450,
technically deferred wages.
Yeah, so that's higher on the liquidation order.
Now, governmental plan, for example, like University of Texas, we have a lot of doctors there. It's a governmental plan, so it's protected. So we recommend max it out. You're good. But for a non-governmental plan, like in Pittsburgh, most of the hospitals have this. We recommend, well, depending on the strength of the hospital, even if the hospital's strength now, if you leave, you can cash it, but we don't want money stuck in a place that's tied to the balance sheet of an employer that's already paying your paycheck. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's generally one that we'd recommend to steer clear of. But the good news of it is that you can put it through your paycheck. You're not going to see it. That's a good thing, because a brokerage account comes in your bank account, then it goes. Or if you're smart, you set up your paycheck where it diverts, part of the money just goes right to your brokerage account, because you can have a routing account number associated with your Fidelity account. So you treat it just like the 401k. So I would agree completely with that mindset. And then as far as like insurance reviews, estate planning, this is typically the level where we're going to talk about, does permanent life insurance make sense on top of term life insurance? Assuming we have everything else maxed out, does it make sense to have an estate plan that revolves revocable trust, maybe even spousal life access trust, a type of irrevocable trust, looking at, future net worth forecast and keeping some flexibility and liquidity in mind as we go. So this is an exciting zone because you have a lot of optionality with lifestyle, but it's also a dangerous zone where it's kind of like, oh, make a lot of money. We're in the top, percentage of, top 5%, depending on your income of income. And if you have the keeping up with the Jones, if you're not intentional about your decisions, it can get pretty tight pretty quickly, and your money temperature can get out of control where your plan's way off track. Where it was on track at 100, now suddenly, if you don't divert, part of your raises into automatic savings, believe it or not, the more money, the more off track you could be.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think in doing this, it's kind of easier to get plans on track the lower the income.
For sure.
Because whenever you get north of $1 million, like all those, like you said, a house, the cars, like those come with big, usually they're not purchased in cash, and it's a big item on the budget.
Hidden cost involved too. Your
Yeah.
maintenance, you know, all kinds of stuff that pops up. So
And you wake up and all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, you were making it work on 15 a month. Now you're at 50 a month, but your committed bills are like 35, or, you know, we see it all the time where it's harder to find and get to that. Usually 15, 20, 30%. If you're saving somewhere in that range, you're going to be good. But it's harder when your budget gets filled up with these commitments, whether they're country clubs or houses, whatever it is.
yeah, and those ranges you hear, if you're saving 15% long term, sure you'll be on track. But I think today is just different, right? So I'd recommend a minimum of 25% because there's a lot of career paths that are high stress. So we don't see clients retiring at 65 traditional. We see the happiest people we see, they can change pathways, they can change employers, and you do that with ultimately building flexibility. And you do that with high savings rates, because more importantly than having the money there is just controlling the money temperature along the way. So you're not used to 80 or 90% of your paycheck. If you're saving half your paycheck and you're making $1 million, if you're bringing in 50 and you're saving 25 and spending 25, and you hate your job, you can take a pay cut in half and still be happy and probably still be on track. If you're bumping up to 40,000 a month is on house one, house two, and your kids are in private school, and you have this low delta of savings, you really don't have flexibility, and you're going to be stuck in that job, grinding and doing whatever your employer says you have to do, working whatever hours your employer says you have to do. And you're just gonna have a lot of regret missing time with your kids. And then you're probably at that point at 60, your kids are gone. You're like, well, no, all I knew was work. And then we've seen a lot of clients in this situation, helping them get out of it's very fulfilling. But if you can stay out of it as you go, it's going to be much, much easier. So $1 million, 53 a month is our analysis here, a net approximately. And it's the same thing we talked about with $500,000. You're maxing out your mega backdoor Roths. At this point, trust, LLCs, asset protection, but max out the 401k, maxing out backdoor Roths, piling money into the 529 plans, really having, probably 10 or 15 a month going in a brokerage account at a minimum is going to be crucial to have that flexibility in your 50s, 60s, where you can switch careers and stay financially independent early. Because you thought 500,000 was a stressful job at $1 million. I mean, that's an elite level. You're in the 1%, and there's the day-to-day grind. It's very demanding. You have a high skill set to depend on you. So asset protection, income protection, protection for your family from risk management, life insurance, disability insurance, all of that stuff is just crucial at this level. Anything else you would add from stepping from the $500,000 to $1 million?
It's just building the muscle and keeping that muscle maintained as your income goes up. Especially, I think it's more relevant with business owners that we work with, I think, because in the early years, maybe they're working and everything's being reinvested into the business and they're still saving a good amount relative to their income. But then when the business scales, now this big paycheck comes in and you have to be able to do something with that. And it has to go in the right accounts, because if it's great if you're doing all the retirement plans and maxing that out, like that's step one, but that's not going to help you make a pivot at age 50 or 45, because none of that money can come out yet until you're 59 and a half. So it's like at that range, it's like, how do we build the muscle to get money into a brokerage account? Because that's where the freedom's unlocked.
No question.
But ultimately you have to save it.
Yeah. I'd say money doesn't change your values. It reveals them. Yeah. And it magnifies who you are on a different level, for good or for better. So having intentionality, having your values figured out, making sure your money's helping your purpose, your life by design, is crucial. Because if you don't do that, the world, especially in the social media notification pushing world that we live in, it's gonna call shotgun. In some ways, we've seen it poison people into the chase of the hedonic treadmill and getting more, accumulating more stuff. And then you wake up and it's like, I'm not even happy because I'm just doing everything to impress people or get other people's admiration. I'm not even living my life. So having those realizations before they happen, having the budget before that paycheck goes from 100 to 500 is, I want to say, it 10x is the success rate of you staying not only just on track, but just happy. Because once you go to a certain level, lifestyle, it's really almost not impossible, but really hard to go down from spending, I'm just making this up, 20 to 15 a month. It's really easy to go from 15 back to up to 20. But once you're at that level of dopamine or brains, it's really hard to go down take the money temperature. It's really easy to go up. So before you go up and doing these audits and having a financial plan, make sure you know the impact on today and long term. And not to say, I think the opposite effect, if you're just saving everything and you're accumulating and you're missing out on life. That's a tragedy as well. So there's a sweet spot here between saving and spending, and very few people, less than 10% of the population, I would say right now, is in that sweet spot. We see a lot of people overreaching, overspending, even at 500 a million. And we see a lot of people saving everything out of fear. And so the sweet spot, I'm going to say, is you're living in abundance with absolute diligence and with just, having logical wisdom and having guides behind you. So discretion.
Yeah, I was going to say
It's abundance with an attention with discretion, meaning, we'll live abundantly and buy this. Well, no, abundance with discretion. Like what is the result of my decisions? Does it fit inside of the philosophy that my family has, what we value, etc. But fear can lead to giant wealth creations, but it can also lead to relationships being ruined, isolation. So an abundance mindset, but with discretion. And I'm going to say the other key factor is stealth wealth. As you go from 100 to 500, especially 500 million, flashing stuff around, people are going to hate you. People are going to be jealous. So doing stealth wealth, people aren't going to know what you make. People aren't going to know how much money you have. That's a really fun, happy place to be, because you're not going to be isolated. You can spend well when you're on vacation. You're not going to have stress. And that's a really tough balance to reach. As we see people overcorrect both ways, oversaving, overspending. And that's our job description here at WA, is to help you hit that sweet spot. Be part of that 10% that's got the right balance between these paradoxes that exist. But any closing thoughts?
No, well said. I think you hit it all.
Perfect. We'll catch everyone next week. And if you're in these income ranges, happy to do a free consultation with you and make sure that you're in the sweet spot.